All right, welcome to another episode of Behind the Scenes. I'm BJ Lisco filling in for Joe Danyi here at Youngstown Studio. And with us today, we have Bryn from Temple Recorder. Bryn, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Dude, thank you for coming down, man. So man, yeah, give me a little bit about the background. How did the recording studio start?
Well, this iteration of the studio started about 20 years ago. In 2004, I bought a building that was built as a Masonic Temple in Salem. It was actually the original Masonic Temple. Pretty much the first year I was in there, I started working with trying to figure out where in the building, it's a big building, and where I wanted to set up shop and begin recording. So it's actually been in different spots, in the place, different floors, different parts of different floors. There's a lot of, it's like 30,000 square feet, but we were kind of like messing with to figure out where to put it. So, during that time, a lot of that was just the bands I was doing at the time. We were recording ourselves or bringing people in. I had friends from other studios that would come in and they would kind of like, all right, let's try this, let's try that. And we're trying to figure out what part of the building sounded best, like, right out of the gate before any actual construction decisions were made. And then fast forward 20 years later, the pandemic, lockdown occurred, and suddenly I couldn't do anything in there. I couldn't have anybody in there. Rehearsals stopped. The few recordings I was doing outside of my own things stopped. And that's when I decided to purpose build the space that we'd been working in and try to develop that into a more commercially viable studio that would be open to the public. And at that time, we built a lot of the kind of things that you would expect in a recording studio: isolated spaces, as much sound proofing, if that's not even a real thing, but and kind of comfort stuff, all the way out to kitchens, bathrooms, lounges, all that business. So now it's open. We've been open for going to 2 years maybe. And there's been a pretty steady, knock on wood, client flow so far, and things have been cool. And of course, now I don't have time to do my own stuff.
Nice. I got you. Well, so you got an analog setup. It's an old school setup there. Talk a little bit about that, because obviously everybody's all the laptop
Sure.
recording and garage bands and all that all that sort of stuff. But your studio is definitely more of a throwback. Yeah.
So for more than one reason. One, I really started learning this craft back when the only options were the old analog systems, primarily open reel tape machines, So there were a couple other things, but I didn't get to work on anything but open reel tape. Starting in 1982, I went to a high school in the Chicago area, and we were fortunate enough to have a television and audio production program, which that's what I did, and that's how I learned in the very beginning, cutting on a splicing block, and editing tape. Very tedious, rewarding. There's something to that, putting your hands on something and something happening. But now that's all been replaced primarily by software, relatively speaking. There's still people working on tape everywhere, but at one time, that's all there was, So now, to your point about laptops, you have people making hit records on laptops in their home. Absolutely a doable thing for sure. But some people, including myself, prefer working with knobs, buttons, tubes, actual circuit boards, wires soldered together.
Right.
And working in big spaces. And that's a big part of what Temple Electric Recorder is about, is the big space. We have a really huge, 5,000 square foot live room, with 14-foot ceiling, and you can get some massive sounds out of there naturally. You can use software to emulate all of that for sure, but There's something about like that moving air in real space, capturing it with, you know, a certain amount of electrical equipment that is not a laptop.
Yeah, right. No, one thing that I've always had I've recorded at a bunch of different studios, but the ones that have always been the best are like those kind of, and we'll see it here in a minute, but the bigger open rooms where like getting the drum sound is always just like so big, especially if you're in a rock band.
Right. People work different ways, and I mean sometimes you need that really squished little tiny room sound for something. Mm-hmm. I'm a different kind of a thing. You know, I grew up listening to bands that were all doing as much as they could to sound huge.
Yeah.
So, you know,
right.
So I kind of shoot for that. I mean, if need be, you know, we can squish the space down in certain, you know, with gobos and, you know, there's smaller rooms and we can do things like that. But I don't really do that as the go-to, you know. I do reciprocal work with other studios. Some of them are set up to be like a smaller, more very controlled space. Mm-hmm. So if somebody says, hey, I want to record drums and I want them to be as dry as possible without going to the software, you know, I'll send them somewhere else maybe, depending. You know, I just like the big room. I like the idea of big rooms, you know, and the sense of space because it's real space.
Sure. Well, talk a little bit about your background in music as well, because you were a part of a lot of bands and stuff over the years. But yeah, man, you know, I know Sacred Hate obviously comes to mind.
Sure.
back in the 80s and stuff. But yeah, I mean, give me a little bit of your history in rock and roll and Youngstown music.
Okay, so again, I became a professional musician in the Chicago area and during my years in high school. So I was in like this new wave power pop thing when I was like a junior in high school. You know, we had big aspirations. We were going to be huge. You know, I remember that one of our rehearsals, we all watched the first episode of MTV because the one kid had cable in his house, you know, and we were like, you know, this is the future and we're going to be part of this. So, and then after about a year or two, when I realized I wasn't going to be part of that, for whatever reason, probably because I started listening to other more aggressive music that was not going to be the future. I mean, that commercial future. I kind of got chucked out of that thing, and I discovered punk rock in the early years of hardcore, and I got into that, you know. So then I ended up moving back to Ohio in '85. Immediately met some folks over in Pittsburgh, and we formed a band called Circus of Death, and I was the singer in that band. So again, you know, very aggressive, you know, music, wanting to sound large. So everything we did was like in big spaces and, you know, going for huge sounds. After that ended, like 87, I started working on this band here in Youngstown that I called Sacred Hate, and it was kind of like a psychedelic hardcore band. You know, it was sort of like a DRI vibe, but with like, you know, we were into psych bands, you know, from the 60s. So it was like if love was really angry. You know? So we made a record and released that, and we toured a lot and played a lot of shows and recorded a second record, but never got it released. So to this day, supposedly someone's still working on getting that released. I don't know much about it. I hope it happens, but you know, we'll see. Then there's been a bunch of like the ones that lasted just a few months or a year or whatever, but notably King Mother was another band that, in fact, you had interviewed us at one point for
I think it was either the YSU paper or it was the
other
magazine
one
I had going.
the magazine,
The Youngstown Pulse I had going.
Pulse.
Yeah.
That was it. The Youngstown Pulse. Yep, that was actually very cool. And then Superbird was another thing that I did with some other dudes from the area. And currently I'm doing a thing called Moon Station Burning that's been around for like, we've been doing this for like 13 years now and have done almost nothing. We rehearse and record a lot, but, we haven't really done a whole lot. So, and I thought, well, when I get this studio built, we'll record all, we'll put out a record a week. Yeah. We hardly ever get time to work on it now.
This episode was brought to you by Youngstown Computer, the Valley's technology company. We appreciate the loyalty and all you have shown us over the years, and it's our promise to serve all the technology needs of the Valley. Call 330-259-7278. We have both home and business services available. Everything from repair, installations, and new equipment. You can improve your Wi-Fi and have technology serve you better. Call 330-259-7278. Or you can schedule your appointment right now on youngstowncomputer.com and look for the red Book Now button.
I gotcha. Well, who are some of the bands that you've had record at the space?
Top of my head right now, most recent. Well, I just had an artist from New York in this past week, Hugh Poole. Mm-hmm. He's currently touring and made time to stop through, and we worked on some stuff, including tracking some drums for another New York artist. It's whom I haven't met, but she's a filmmaker and did a cover of Stooges' Dirt in a really cool, weird, spooky, down electronic way, but wanted live drums. So a couple Cleveland bands recently. One called Muzzle, like sort of a 90s thrash sort of a vibe. Very cool, super fun to work with. Mm-hmm. And a band called Ringer, who is an emerging band right now, and they're like, this is a very ambitious project, like big horn sections, lots of keys. Mm-hmm. Remember, the sort of the guy leading it was in the Zoot Suit Riot band, the Daddies, as he prefers to call it, rather than the full name because it's just gross. One of the only Salem bands I recorded, called Late to Start, sort of another emerging old school hardcore band. They wanted to work with me because, I had experience like when that all really was happening, and they were like, we want you to do it. And, it's a project that's still in flux right now. It's not done, but right. It's getting there. So, and again, like I was saying, I also work with other studios doing the same kinds of thing. Maybe they need a big drum room or something, so they'll track drums at my place and take it elsewhere. And I'm just trying to get people to go to recording studios,
right? Even
if it's not my own. Just that whole like culture of recording studio,
sure.
Which actually is a domain which we own, cultureofrecordingstudio.com, and it's supposed to be like a kind of a marketplace for people, studio owners, to just sort of gather and kind of promote that whole idea of like, yeah, you can record on your laptop in your bedroom, but if you want someone to help you facilitate the making of your art, maybe you want to try going to a recording studio, at least give it a try. It might be a thing where you're just like, wow, I wish I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
But I doubt it, because if you're really there to make your art as an artist, and play your songs and your instrument, it's great when somebody else is doing all the work, and you're just kind of focusing on that rather than like learning software and how to set up microphones and all that other business. So
yeah, you're down in Salem, right on State Street there.
Right on the main drag. Yep, which is kind of cool because we're right next to, there's a hotel right behind us, so sometimes bands need to stay, for multiple days. They'll stay in the hotel. There's restaurants everywhere, bars, stores, so you're not like on an island somewhere where it's like, oh, we forgot to bring whatever. Now what? Just step out and go get food or whatever. We're looking here that, so yeah, there's tape machines in the room, but as you can see, there's, monitor running Pro Tools. So it's a hybrid situation. So I'm using a vintage 1987 Trident 80C, hand built in London, but it's all interfaced into the computer essentially. So I use Pro Tools almost like a tape machine primarily, rather than everything being done there. And then tape echoes, tube compressors, equalizers, some really nice vintage stuff, and some of it is brand new, but is vintage built, so the Neve preamps and the UAD preamps and stuff, those are relatively new, but they are the same design they were back, in the 70s. So, and even before. So, the control room's big enough that you can get a whole band in there comfortably listening to what's happening. We have a decent selection of vintage and new amplifiers and an isolated amplifier room. So, it's wired as such that you can be out in the big room with the drums, but playing through amps that are mic'd up far enough away that you've got a lot of isolation, and it's really loud in there, depending on what you're using.
This episode was brought to you by Youngstown Computer, the Valley's technology company. We appreciate the loyalty and all you have shown us over the years, and it's our promise to serve all the technology needs of the Valley. Call 330-259-7278. We have both home and business services available. Everything from repair, installations, and new equipment. You can improve your Wi-Fi and have technology serve you better. Call 330-259-7278. Or you can schedule your appointment right now on youngstowncomputer.com and look for the red Book Now button.
But again, this idea of a purpose-built space, these rooms were built specifically for isolation and.
So yeah, I'm gonna stop this. So there's you and Lemmy.
Yeah, yep.
So you told me a story. We're gonna pause this video because you told me a story of meeting Lemmy and how this photo came about. So yeah, please tell our viewers
sure
the crazy story of Lemmy.
I can't remember the year. I want to say it was I think it's on that photograph. Is it
late 90s? I think.
Yeah, 97. Then yeah. I think that might be dated 1997. So yeah. At that time, a friend of mine, Margaret Sadie, who is from Youngstown, she was a journalist and photographer in the Cleveland area at that time, and she had gotten something lined up with Epitaph Records, the label that Wayne Kramer from the MC5 was signed to at the time, to develop what was called an EPK, an electronic press kit. I got hired to shoot this thing and then edit it under the direction of Margaret. So Margaret was the director of this thing. So I spent a little more than a weekend, primarily in Cleveland, interviewing Wayne and shooting some live performance stuff. Well, just by looking through the Cleveland scene, we found out that Motorhead was playing in town, and Wayne just said, "Oh, Lemmy's an old friend of mine." So, you could see the light bulb above Margaret's head, and she made some calls, and next thing, she said, "We're going to the hotel to interview Lemmy, about the MC5's influence on him and Motorhead," which we did. So we spent an afternoon in the hotel room with Lemmy interviewing him, and he was a pretty fun guy, when I could understand what he was saying. He was, and at the end of the thing, he just, we're taking some photos, because in that room was Jimmy Zero from the Dead Boys, Wayne Kramer from the MC5, and Lemmy. And it was pretty cool, really, if you're into hard rock. And we were getting ready to take off, and Lemmy grabs my arm, and interlocks our arms, and he goes, "Let's get a photo, soccer style." And I was like, and that's why my face, I was trying not to laugh. The dude was so funny, and we're all trying to be like serious and, hard asses. You know, so.
So was there a spot where Lemmy was playing you? He was playing you the new record. So the record at the time, which was Snake Bite Love, which coincidentally is the first Motorhead album that I think I ever bought. I bought that and Ace of Spades at the same time.
Oh wow!
And so
Boy,
it was like,
that's a gamut.
I know.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think, oh, it's the same band, but it's like, it's all right. It technically, but
yeah, right.
But very different. But yeah, you were telling me that he just got the album hadn't come out yet, but we played it for you.
I don't know if it was out or not at the time, but they were touring that album, so I'm guessing it was out. But what happened is, so then when we get done with the thing in the hotel, and they decide that they were on their way to the Rock Hall, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was across Cleveland from where the hotel was. And coincidentally, that was our next stop as our shooting location for this thing we were doing with Wayne. So, well, we're all going over there. Lemmy says, I'm going to take the bus. And I'm like, dude, you can ride with us, man. I thought he meant the public bus.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow, I thought they were doing a lot better than this. Well, then we all go down to the parking lot, and this huge black tour bus rolls out of the underground parking lot. And we're like, oh, that bus, the tour bus. So Wayne and I got out of the car, and we ran over, and we got on the Motorhead tour bus and rode across Cleveland to the Rock Hall. And it was a slow drive because that's a big vehicle trying to make its way through town. Lemmy decided to play us the new record, like at full volume on their bus sound system. And we're, the bus is big, but it's not that big. And we're just sort of sitting on this little couch, and he's standing right in front of us. And I don't know what he got. I knew he was drinking a lot of Jack in the hotel room, and I don't know what else he got into, like when they were going to the bus or once they got on the bus. But suddenly it was like, oh, this is sort of an intense experience now. And Lemmy was like right in front of us, and he was air bassing and singing at full volume right in our faces and made us listen to every last song. Right. Yeah, so basically the whole Lemmy thing was great. I mean, it was an unexpected thing, and it was kind of scary at first, but then, it makes a great story.
Right. So all right, well, back to the studio here.
Yeah, so there's different lounges around the room that are all just kind of in the big room. And then there's another area outside of there that, it's got a little kitchen and stuff. But my whole thing with that is, like, I just like the place to be comfortable. That's because, again, with a lot of experiences that I've had in studios that are hard to get comfortable in, it's just hard to, at least for me, to then make the art that I came to make. If I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to be able to completely immerse myself in doing what I came to do. So I try to do as much as possible to make the place, like, interesting and fun to hang out in, but not like so, formal that you're like kind of feeling uptight,
Right.
And yeah, here, like, I got a lot of pedals, some old, some new, and that's a thing that a lot of times different players, they're like, man, I wish I had one of these, or we should try for a sound like this, and they might not have what we want, or, so then maybe there's something here in the thing. Go look in the pedal bar and see if there's something that we might be able to pull out for this. Or I might just make the decision like, hey, we're going to try and do this. Let's just grab this and try it out, So, yeah, and I mean, again, you're kind of starting to see, like, how big the room is a little bit here. It's hard to get like a shot where you're seeing the entire room, but there's a lot of instruments there available for people coming in, especially a lot of percussion, drums, different drum kits. Being a drummer, I keep stuff there, and the house kit, which is the kit right here. This is, that's a custom made kit with Keller shells, and it sounds good, and I have a spot in the room that I think drums sound best, and it's kind of always there. But I mean, you can bring your own stuff in, or we have other ones there as well.
Always appreciative of a studio that's got a solid drum set there that the engineer already knows how to mic up and stuff too. It's like,
right.
Always will take that. It's like, instead of like tearing down and setting up, if they're familiar with it and it's a quality set, it's like always, we do it all the time.
Yeah, it's important because you can spend a lot of time miking up and checking and trying to pull sounds out of a not so good drum set, you know, and that happens a lot where somebody's like, "What? I use it all the time." It's like, yeah, but maybe not to make a record, you know.
Right.
You know, we've got a pretty decent piano there. We keep maintained. Hammond organ that's in really nice shape. Anything that you would see out in the studio is available to use and is in good working condition. And there's a lot of art around the room. We try to kind of keep it interesting. You know, it's a space to create in. So I want to, you know, populate it with things that have been created or are being created, you know. So it's a nurturing space. It's a space, you know, that makes you feel good about being there to make something. Yeah, trying now. This is a spot here, another little lounge area that is a lot of vintage video game systems, you know. You know, it's not like I'm trying to get people to come in there and pay by the hour to play video games, but sometimes, you know, if somebody's working on something in another room, somebody might want to come out here and just be like, I'm going to go play around with this crap, you know. So it's a big room, so there's a lot of furniture in there. Yeah, so that's another thing, like aside from the piano and the Hammond M3 that's there, you know, there's a lot of synthesizers that are both vintage and new, primarily all analog stuff. There's a couple digital samplers there as well, but you know, but again, a lot of artists and, you know, different people's art in the room, and try to support the local art scene as much as possible. I still make art. I'm actually part of an exhibition that's up right now at the Trumbull Art Guild. It's a very cool show that's, you know, about Jim Lucas from the university who has passed, and the work of his and his daughters, and then there's like the friends and peers. So there's several of us Youngstown artists that have work in there as well.
Nice. Well, how do folks get in touch with you?
Well, the best way is, the easiest way is the website, so the studio is called Temple Electric Recorder, but the studio domain name is just templerecorder.com. You can find all that, and then all the attached social stuff. So the Facebook stuff, the Instagram stuff, all that is all linked through all that. And then there's phone number. People can actually call. Let me give it a shot, and we can check and then make sure.
I can.
I believe it's 330-333-6033. So you can call. You can even text that number. So it's, you know. Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, Bryn, thank you so much for coming by,
you bet, man.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Appreciate you having me.